the ancient world's most famous pleasure-seeker, lived in a small garden with a handful of close friends, owned almost nothing, and described his life as the happiest imaginable. The part that has been edited out of his reputation is what he said was actually responsible for that happiness. About 2,300 years ago in Athens, when philosophers competed for wealthy patrons and wisdom was mostly a performance staged for audiences who could pay, a thinker named Epicurus did something that looked eccentric to everyone around him. He bought a modest garden outside the city. He invited a small group of people, including women and former slaves, at a time when both were excluded from serious philosophical circles, to come live and think alongside him. And he spent the rest of his life there, deliberately, quietly, in what he called the most pleasurable way a human being could exist. He became famous for teaching that pleasure was the highest good. His enemies used that to paint him as an advocate for excess and indulgence, which is why his name still carries that connotation today. What he actually taught was almost the opposite. And the center of it, the thing he returned to more than any other idea, was something most people in pursuit of happiness consistently underinvest in. Not experiences, not achievements, not comfort or security or freedom from pain. Though he valued all of those, friendship specifically, deep, honest, reciprocal friendship, he called it the greatest of all the means that wisdom provides for happiness throughout life. The Athens he lived in was a city obsessed with status competition, political influence, philosophical reputation, the respect of powerful men. These were the currencies people spent their entire lives accumulating, and the relationships that resulted from that culture were largely transactional. You were useful to people who could advance your position. They were useful to you. The bond lasted exactly as long as the mutual benefit. Loneliness was everywhere in that world, just as it is now, hidden underneath all the activity and social performance. People surrounded by others, and fundamentally unknown by any of them. We gave this a contemporary update. We have more ways to be connected than any humans in history, and some of the highest recorded rates of loneliness. We have networks, followers, contacts, colleagues, acquaintances. What many people have almost none of is someone who actually knows them, who would tell them an uncomfortable truth, who would show up at the worst moment without being asked. Epicurus looked at the transactional relationship culture of his time and asked what it was actually producing. The answer was people who were always performing, never resting, never safe enough to be honest, and chronically unsatisfied no matter how much they accumulated. So what did he build instead? The garden wasn't just a living arrangement. It was a deliberate experiment in a different kind of relationship. The people who gathered there weren't united by usefulness to each other in any conventional sense. Former slaves had no social capital to offer. Women were excluded from public life entirely. The community Epicurus built was specifically not the kind that could advance anyone's career or reputation. What held it together was something harder to quantify and far more valuable. Genuine mutual care, shared thinking, honesty that didn't require a performance, and the specific relief of being with people who wanted nothing from you except your actual company. He wrote letters to his friends his entire life. Many survived, and reading them, what's striking is the texture of the relationships, the warmth, the directness, the willingness to share real difficulty and real delight without filtering either for an audience. These weren't networking communications. They were correspondence between people who actually knew each other. His observation about friendship went deeper than sentiment, though. He made an argument that was almost clinical in its logic. He said most suffering that people experience is not about physical pain or material lack. It's about anxiety. Specifically, the anxiety of uncertainty. Not knowing whether the future is safe. not knowing whether you can handle what's coming, not knowing whether anyone will be there if things fall apart. And his claim was that deep friendship is the most reliable antidote to that anxiety that exists. Not because friends can prevent bad things from happening, they can't, but because the knowledge that you are genuinely not alone, that there are people who see you clearly and are on your side regardless of outcome, changes your relationship to uncertainty at a fundamental level. It's like the difference between walking into a difficult situation carrying everything yourself and walking in knowing backup exists. The external situation is identical. The internal experience is completely different. He called this the security that friendship provides, and he considered it a greater contribution to human happiness than wealth, reputation, or almost any other variable people spend their lives optimizing for. Now look honestly at your own situation. How many people do you have in your life who would tell you something true if the true thing was uncomfortable? Not to be cruel, but because they care more about your actual well-being than your momentary comfort. How many people know what you're actually struggling with right now, not the version you present publicly, but the real thing? How many relationships do you have where you don't have to manage how you come across? Most people, if they're honest, have very few. Sometimes none. And the reason isn't that they're unlikable or difficult. It's that deep friendship requires a specific kind of investment that our current culture makes surprisingly hard. It requires time without a productive agenda. It requires vulnerability that feels risky in environments built on performance. It requires the willingness to be present through someone else's difficulty when nothing you can do will fix it, which is deeply uncomfortable for people who are used to being useful. Epictetus would say you've been applying the wrong model. You've been treating relationships the way you treat everything else, efficiently, instrumentally, with clear outcomes in mind. And the exact quality that makes friendship valuable is the one thing that evaporates under that approach. The garden wasn't productive by any external measure. No great political outcomes emerged from it. No wealth was generated. But the people in it, by almost every account, experienced something that the powerful and famous men competing in the city outside its walls did not. A life that felt genuinely good to be living. He wrote near the end of his life in letters that show a man at peace. Of all the things that wisdom provides for living one's whole life in happiness, the greatest by far is the possession of friendship. Not success, not pleasure in the conventional sense, not even wisdom itself. Remarkably, friendship. The revolutionary part of his position isn't the claim. Most people would agree in the abstract that friendship matters. The revolutionary part is the priority he gave it. He organized his entire life around cultivating it. He sacrificed the kind of ambition that would have made him famous in conventional terms. He chose the garden over the stage. What would it mean to take that seriously? Not as a nice addition to your real priorities, as the thing worth actually organizing your life around. A few people you know completely, who know you completely, who have seen you at your worst and are still there. That specific form of wealth, Epictetus would say, is the one that actually pays out. Everything else is comfort in the meantime. Subscribe if this one made you think about who you're actually investing in. More forgotten wisdom next time.